Start with calm and quiet mind. Alert and attentive mind. Balance and economous mind. Breathing in mindfully. Breathing out mindfully. Single-pointedly attending to your breath. As it comes in, as it goes out. Develop distinct awareness of your breathing. Distinct awareness of incoming breath as it comes in, outgoing breath as it goes out. Calmly, attentively, develop sustained awareness of your breathing. Sustained awareness of your breathing. Continuous, uninterrupted awareness of your breathing. The awareness of wandering mind. As soon as your mind wanders, and it always wanders, Try to develop just distinct awareness of this wandering mind. Recognize the wandering mind. Acknowledge what it is and then come back to your breathing. Try not to react against wandering mind. As long as you are aware that your mind wanders, you're still practicing mindfulness. Because reactivity is absent. Your mind is no longer reacting, just aware, alert, attentive. Calmly, economously. Always remain your eyes closed, softly, your backbone upright, very crucial. And then a position that is comfortable enough that you can put up with for as long as possible, sitting there motionlessly. And the only motion you will realize is your respiration, incoming, outgoing. And your observation. Just observe, observe continuously, continuously. Not with your eyes, visual faculty, but the wisdom faculty that understands the nature of your respiration, the touch of respiration, distinct awareness of your respiration. Develop the faculty of awareness. The faculty of a concentration, single-pointed concentration. constant agitation, constant thinking will always interrupt your meditation. And when it happens, it is important to always to stay calm, collected. Without being disappointed, frustrated, accept whatever happened. And then come back to your breathing. Work patiently. Work diligently, diligently. Okay, thank you. Right, so Lotus Sutra, and we are somewhat progressing slowly. I understand that there is no question, Lindy. Nobody submitted questions this week.
Nobody submitted questions this last couple of weeks, but I've just said during the session we can put hands up if we have questions.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think please do raise your questions. And there's also, when you read, of course, if you find passages that you think is very interesting, but somehow it's not being covered, because of course it's a very long text, so I end up skipping lots of text. I try to focus and try to unpack those passages that I think summarize point and also more important, because it's a very long text, so we will, as we did in the past, we will set aside most of the text, but focus on few passages or texts that are more informative, that basically gives us a concise information or concise account of what is happening in a particular chapter. Okay, so those of you who are joining for first time, Arun included, Arun, welcome. And also welcome everyone, and thank you, Lindy, again for organizing this. Now, of course, this is a sutra study, essentially it's a reading group, and we have been doing this now. This is the second year, right, Lindy?
Second year of the sutra, sutra last year, a new sutra this year. So yes,
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
We will have a different sutras, of course. I mean, it takes some time to read and complete all sutras, but I think they will have plenty of other sutras and lined up after this, and of course, it hopefully it's going to be online as well, ongoing study program. But the idea is basically looking at most important sutras. Because remember, and these sutras all Mahayana sutras. So you'll notice that In fact, it's a translation. There's a translation project called 84,000, which is, I think, making a lot of contributions, and all our sutras are directly translated by them. They are latest translations, and we can actually reliably trust the translation quality, authenticity, reliability, and I think general, the information that we get, because they are probably some of the best in the field that have been doing this kind of work, and there are a lot of people collectively producing. Because after all, the intention is within, I think, was it 50 or 20 years? I don't exactly remember that period. They want to translate the entire Tibetan canon, and they started with, of course, Kanju. Kanju section of Tibetan canon that are attributed to the Buddha himself. Of course, from the modern academic standpoint, it might be questionable, because most of those texts that we were reading came much later, at least later than Nagarjuna, which means 1st century, certainly later than 1st century. And Mahayana flourished around 1st century, 2nd century. So most, but nevertheless, the Mahayana tradition actually attributes these texts, including Lotus that we are reading, to the Buddha himself. And the text, as you read, actually does sound like that. And remember, these are texts. If they are not spoken by Buddhas, then supposedly somebody might have. Of course, there has to be somebody who compiled them, or author them. But they are all authorless texts, because they are all attributed Buddha himself. Now, Lotus Sutra is a distinctive, or at least one of the very important sutras that you'll notice play a very important role in, also not in Tibetan Buddhism, but also in Southeast Asian Buddhism, because Lotus Sutra, in fact, in the name of Lotus Sutra, there are entire traditions that are developed. They were called, particular schools in Chinese. Tentai is a good example, because on the one hand, Sutra teaches a lot of lots of interesting aspects, but the the major theme it has is also taking Buddha's words seriously. So Tentai is a much of a devotional sort of school, which basically takes, if you read the sutra itself, that might be enough for somebody's at least a rebirth into pure realms. It doesn't promise liberation, because it's not possible. Doesn't promise Buddhahood, and sometimes, in fact, actually, it might so go to that extent. The point is, devotionalism in Buddhist tradition is very much based on this kind of text. But then this text also has other aspect, namely, this text teaches you, and in fact, the very important aspect of Buddha's quality, what we call skillfulness. So the claim is that Buddha uses so many different skills, diverse skills, because each skill is tailored towards certain individual, even though there are so many different individuals, or maybe let's say 2 or 3 individuals with the same problem. At least from an ordinary perspective, the problem might look same, but if you look from a deeper aspect, the causes of those problems might be fundamentally different. So that means Buddha teaches differently to those individuals that might have apparently the same problem. So therefore, of course, that skill is called particular skill, what's called skillful method. Now, the other point that, and most important point, at least in Lotus Sutra, that is sort of covered and discussed all the way through, is the notion of three yanas or ekayanas. Sorry, ekayanas rather than 3 yanas. Remember, 3 yanas is generally, basically, Buddhist teaching talks about those 3 yanas, there are 3 individual goals that we can opt as if a practitioner. I mean, it's interesting that sometimes we think that if you are Buddhist, then though it is necessary for us to have those 3 goals. But in the modern world now, currently, if you ask most of the Buddhists, although we might identify as Buddhists, but I wonder whether they actually, individual Buddhists would associate themselves as a Shravakas or Patek Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. I mean, because those goals are so noble and ideal, and sometimes, of course, commitment so heavy, we just kind of fall aside. So we don't. Most of us basically don't belong to any of those camps because we are ordinary Buddhas, which means we are not really committed to that kind of a project. Anyway, so if you are really committed Buddhists who really don't see much purpose in this particular life, but the real purpose is actually using this life to make our longer goal purposeful, and then of course that you could say somebody who actually is able to sacrifice this life for the benefit or for the good of future life, especially in liberation or bodhisattvahood, or if you want Buddhahood. That's the real definition of being authentic Buddhists, if you want. But most of us are not even authentic Buddhists, even though we might consider ourselves as Buddhists. Because Buddhists supposed to be a true Buddhist is somebody who follows Buddhism has to have very limited desires, and desires nothing to do with this life. Nothing. Well, of course, we ordinary even the ordained monks and nuns, accomplished that meditation teachers, or accomplished, let's say, Shravakas or Pratik Buddhas will, of course, certainly look after themselves in this life. That's very important. Take care of themselves, but that's not necessarily desire, but this is a necessity. Of course, they will definitely take care of the necessity, but basically the project for them is fundamentally to achieve their goal. So therefore, I think that compared to the ordinary goals we set in our life, let's say having a proper house, proper clothes, or proper position at the society, reputation, name, all these things does not matter to a real Buddhist, somebody who is actually well developed in the path. But for ordinary Buddhists, of course, it does matter. So therefore, if you look at the Buddhist community, they are both ordained as well as lay people. Lay people are, in that sense, I think, allowed to have those ordinary goals because we say we are ordinary beings. But if you are already set in the as a bhikkhu and bhikshunis, then of course the goal is much higher. Now, so what we did last week, basically we look at chapter 4, and in chapter 4 is the aspiration, and you can see in chapter 4 the interesting thing is Buddha all along. In fact, the chapter 4 says Buddha basically teach one universal vehicle, the vehicle of Buddhayana, a great vehicle, the vehicle that is directed towards full awakening, full enlightenment, not just half enlightenment of Shravakas or Patik Buddhas, or goal is not to attain, ultimate goal is not to attain individual Buddhas. But nevertheless, Buddha does use these skillful methods to teach, because there are individuals who actually who basically cannot take. Ultimate goal is to become fully enlightened for the benefit of others. So we saw this parable of a man, of course, a man who got lost, or say a father and son separate for almost 50 years, and father eventually become very, very rich, and he wants to entrust all his wealth to his son, but his son was not ready, because his son was really happy to live a beggar's life. So what he did, remember the parable, the son gradually learned how to sort of become more familiar with the wealth. Initially, he was really scared of wealth. When he sees opulence and luxury and position, he just ran away. And later on, his father very skillfully helped him to establish his authority is to understand how to use this wealth, not necessarily, of course, in the unfruitful way, but of course, in a meaningful way. And gradually he established himself, and then ultimately, the father was able to basically announce to the world that he is going to be the heir to his empire. And but if you in this parable, you can see that this wise man, old man, literally trained his son to become confident. Even though initially he was not confident, he is happy to be a garbage collector. And his father, knowing very well it was so painful that in spite of all his wealth, he cannot give his wealth to his son and make him a very rich person, because his son can't take it. And this is like Buddha was saying, this is like a Buddha teaching Mahayana Bodhisattva ideal to somebody who cannot take up. So for somebody who is interested in individual liberation, Shravaka and Pratyekayana. Remember, Shravaka and Pratyek Buddha are individual liberation seekers. They cannot, in fact, it's too much for them to cope with the idea of that you have to become enlightened for the whole good of all others. That is too much, because it comes along with the Bodhisattva commitment. But the idea is that eventually we can rise up to this kind of expectation and rise up to take this responsibility seriously. So in this way, and Buddha basically trains, and that's why chapter 4 is designated as aspiration, because after all, Buddha, even though Buddha wants to teach, give us the ultimate teaching, namely Buddhayana, but because of our limited aspiration, his skill is in a sense limited by our aspiration. So that's what basically we discussed in the chapter 4. Now in chapter 5, I think we get a lot more. And if you remember, of course, in chapter 3, we also met this another great parable, the parable of dilapidated building, the big building there with a very rich man with 500 kids. Now he wants to rescue all the 500 kids, and the 500 kids doesn't know the human language because they are just kids. So, and in order to, because they're, and remember the house is supposed to be on trapped, it's on fire, and now your job is to rescue them, all of them. And you cannot use your strength because there is only one door. You might be very big and heavy, and so you cannot use your strength. The only way for you to take them out is actually use your own skill, intelligence, and then basically get them out. And that's what we notice Buddha using his skillful teaching in the chapter 3. And remember, he said he uses toys. Children's like toys, so he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you your favorite toys, but the condition is you have to come out." And then basically, once they come out, remember this big building resembles samsara, three levels of samsara, and it's on fire of desire, anger, hatred, or ignorance. And once these kids come out, it resembles liberation. They are already liberated from the samsaric world. Now, because they are not trapped by desire, not trapped by anger, not trapped by confusion, so they are much more capable now. Their ability is manifold, because initially our limitations, we are limited by our desires, angers, what we call the afflictive emotions. But once we are liberated from that, then of course our cognitive capability becomes much clearer. And then what this wise man did was, okay, he gave them only one toy, right? And that toy resembles Buddhayana. Basically, he said, okay, now you guys are freed. Really don't have to worry about the petty things. You can, basically worry about what is the maximum capability you have that you need to achieve. So initially, just like this beggar, the son who is scared of his own potential. He thinks that he doesn't have the potential to basically own this kind of wealth. Now, later on, he learns and he becomes a wealthy person. And the father was unable to trust him. In the same way, Buddha's teaching is that gradually human beings are, or persons are gradually trained. And then later on, once they're fully liberated from the misgivings or what we call the limitations or constraints of our negative emotions, once we are fully liberated from that, then now, of course, we can think much bigger. We can think about, okay, now I am no longer trapped by samsara. So I'm no longer, let's say, if I'm free from my desires, and that people cannot manipulate me because of my desire, or people cannot manipulate me because of my anger or hatred. Because remember that these are the weaknesses. These are our worst weaknesses. Now, if you liberate yourself, free yourself from those weaknesses, then essentially Buddha says, now you are like lion. And Buddha says, once they are become arahant, the liberated individual, Buddha says, you are like lion. You can go as one. Initially, if you are, until unless you are free from those desire, hatred, and anger, Buddha always says, go in twos or threes, because who knows, if you go into a household and then somebody plays and manipulate your desire, and then you get trapped. Or if you goes in the street and beg food, somebody says something against, and you become angry because you are not free from anger. Somebody manipulates you and victimizes you, and so therefore our weakness can be very easily exploited. And these weaknesses, they are called, remember, kleshas, afflictions, because they are really the one that actually keep us trapped and bounded. But once you're free, just like those kids, they come out from the building, and Buddha says, now you're like lion. They can kill you physically, but they cannot make you angry because you are liberated from anger. They cannot manipulate your desires because you are free from desires. And therefore, Buddha says, now go around, spread the message. So then what happens is here, now these disciples, those disciples are ready to take the bigger step. The ultimate step is Buddhahood. Because then now Buddha sees that, of course, now they can think about their ultimate capability. So therefore, if you look in Mahayana tradition, the Buddha, Tathagata Garbha, the potential to become Buddha is always a seed that is seed within all individuals. But to materialize initially, of course, is difficult. So gradually, one becomes more and more confident with one's own capability. And then once we have become confident, and that's the moment when Buddha basically shares. And this is what happens to these Sravakas. So remember, Buddha's disciples, they were shocked for the fact that the Buddha was saying, there's only one yana. So far, we always thought there's three yanas, and we are happy because we're individual liberators. And Buddha says, no, this is not enough. There are still more things that you can do. Don't just happy with what you have, what you gain so far. There are a lot that you can gain more because you have the Buddha capability, good Buddha seed, Tathagata Garbha within you. So that's how the teaching, the trend of the sutra goes. Okay, in eventually the idea of the sutra is actually to inspire beings, individuals, to appreciate what they can do, the innate capability, innate skills, and that innate skill or innate capability need to be sort of tutored, trained gradually through mental cultivation, not just through, remember, not just through academic sort of studies. You might get intellectual inspiration here and there, but of course, usually remember this is a kind of a transformation that is psychological, phenomenological, and to a certain extent, it's biological. Okay, now in chapter 5, we meet a lot more interesting parables. And let me share the screen for you. And let me bring up, okay. When I share the screen. Are you able to see this?
Not yet.
Ah, not yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so what happened then? Ah, so I didn't share it yet. That's why. Okay. How about
Thanks.
now?
Yes, that's it now, Sonam. Thank you. Can maybe just
Okay, I will.
enlarge the page for us
I will full zoom it.
on full screen.
Yeah. Full screen doesn't need give me the option. What is that?
Doesn't do that. Mm.
1 minute. I think they should be.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Not entirely, but I think slightly better.
You can't do the.
I'm looking at the. Okay. Yep. Now can I enter full screen? Is that better?
Yes, thank you. Wonderful. Perfect.
Okay. So in the chapter 5, we are meeting a lot more. Again, the theme is same. Basically, the thesis is ekayana. There is only one yana. There is only one vehicle. There is only one ultimate goal that we need to achieve, and that is Buddhayana. That is Buddhahood, ultimate awakening. And not only that, of course, in this chapter, you will notice that Buddha is using different types of metaphors. You'll notice that the parable of sun and the moon, where Buddha is sun and the moon, where the parable of rain and clouds, or maybe clouds laden with rain, where again the rain and the clouds resembles Buddha, the parable of porter, and then also compassionate guide in chapter 5. So let's, and the whole idea is this. Buddha basically gave a universal teaching, and a universal teaching, and each individual, depending on our aspiration, take what we need or what we are capable of absorbing, what we are capable of receiving. And the claim also is that Pratyek Buddhas and Shravakas, initially when their disciples not mature enough, they fail to, even though Buddha teach it, Buddha gave the same teaching, but they basically fail to take the whole teaching, the meaning of the whole teaching. Okay, so, and that the chapter 5, the title is herbs, and those are herbs basically of the medicinal herbs that they're supposed to grown in on the Himalayas, and we'll come across that parable. That's how the chapter's named, and you'll notice that actually the chapter name, it just it does not tell you entirely about what is happening in the chapter, because what is happening in the chapter is a lot more than just herbs. So then the Bhagavan said to brother Mahakashyapa, remember Mahakashyapa is one of the Buddha's probably most important, at least from Theravada point of view. Mahakashyapa is one of the most important disciples. And other great Stavira. Stavira, Tibetan word would be Neden, elders, basically. This is excellent Kashyapa. It is excellent Kashyapa that you have praised the true qualities of Tathagata Kashyapa. Those are the qualities of Buddha. Now, basically, this is literally like a prelude or introduction, because this chapter also talks about a lot about the qualities, and they are particularly also skillful qualities. In 5.2, Kashyapa, Tathagata is the Lord of Dharma. He is the principal king of all the Dharmas. Remember this word Dharma. Dharma has I think we might have discussed a little bit earlier, but Dharma has many various different meanings. But in this case, of course, you could say is the instruction, the teaching of Buddha. But sometimes Dharma means, in Abhidhamma literature, Dharma means atomic particles. Remember those dharmas, the ultimately real entities, indivisible, smallest units, they are called dharmas. But in this case, you take it as a general term that we use, Tibetan Che. He's the principal king of all the dharmas, Kashyapa. Whatever dharma the Tathagata is present, and the way he presents it, that is how it is. Now here what important point is.
Excuse me, Sonam, do you mind if I just interrupt for one moment?
Yes, please, do
I'm
interrupt.
just wondering, Sonam, we've got the full screen for the text, but we don't see you anymore. Usually we can see the small thumbnail of you, but now we're
really? Okay.
wondering if you have the option there for your video to be on or not. Usually we see both. We see your full screen plus we see you. Oh, there you are. That's better. Thank you.
Visible. Okay,
I was
sorry
missing
for
you.
that.
Sorry. Thank you, Sonam. That's better. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
I might have accidentally
That's okay.
hit that button.
Thank you so much.
So then he says he presents them through the wisdom of Tathagata so that those dharmas lead to the state of omniscience. So you can see that actually in the end, Buddha's teachings ultimately are aimed to geared towards the final Buddha omniscience. Now this word omniscience, sarvaya, is a Sanskrit word. Or in fact, you could say even a Hindi word, sarvaya. Sarva means all, ya is to understand. Somebody who knows all, knowing all. Omniscience in English, of course, usually is associated with God, and God is one of the qualities of God is being omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient, somebody who all knows. And of course, in this case, when you use omniscience, sarvaya, in the case of as an attribute of Buddha, we're talking about not just like they are not interested in the tiniest, let's say, numbers of ants or how many molecules in particular atom or particular sort of a solid entity. They are not interested. That omniscience here in this context is not this type of omniscience. Omniscience essentially is an attribute, somebody who also understands the entirety of 5 aggregates. 12 domains of cognition, or what we sometimes call 18 elements that constitute what is to be human being. That basically is a definition of omniscience in this case. So one of that omniscience is a quality, or the one of the you could say attribute of with the. So is Tathagata. Tathagata is somebody who's gone gone beyond samsara, gone beyond attachment, gone beyond desire, and you can, of course, explain Tathagata in this way. Evarishepa, or somebody who is actually transcended, and of course, transcended not on the sense that you leave something, but transcended in the sense of real transformation. Okay? He has attained the superior motivation concerning all dharmas. He has attained the supreme highest wisdom of skillful means in bringing certainty in all dharmas. Now, this word motivation, this is interesting because sometimes Tibetans debate, Tibetan scholars, particularly Tibetan practitioners, and in fact, they debate, and sometimes many of them claim that Buddhists don't have intention. Because they are, and you will notice that actually there are some supports, defense for that kind of claim. They will say Buddha is like a porter, somebody who a very strong porter who basically spins his wheel, and then once that the spinning takes place, the momentum is picked, then you really don't have to do it repeatedly. Whereas in the case of ordinary beings, we constantly have to think and get ourselves motivated. But Buddha's motivation has been set for millions and billions of years. So therefore, it's all like all he or she does is essentially does it automatically. So sometimes Western academics, in fact, go as far as saying that Buddha is like like Robert. So there is a notion called Robo Buddha. Without any intention, everything basically jobs are basically satisfied. Now, I personally find it not very satisfying. I think it is just as in here you can say Buddha can have intention. That intention doesn't have to be somehow diluted, because the idea is, one of the claims is any intention is self-focused, self-oriented, and self-seeking, and therefore ego-based, ego-centered. And therefore, Buddha is transcendent. Buddha has gone beyond ego grasping. So therefore, he cannot have motivation, or he cannot have this kind of intention. That's the logic behind why people want to say Buddha doesn't have intention. But of course, in this text says very clearly that Buddha has a superior motivation. He attains supreme, highest wisdom of skills method in bringing certainty in all the dharmas. And then 5.3 says, Kashyapa, it is like this. They are all the plants. Now, of course, this analogy is very pretty long. So essentially, you can think about this. There are lots of plants, and you can see, of course, plants ranging from bushes, herbs, and forest trees, and to sometimes very big, giant trees. Now imagine what they do, what type of functions they have, especially when it comes to absorbing water. Color, of course, they have different colors, different, and sometimes they grow on the plains, others in the mountains, mountain valleys. Sometimes some plants just grow in desert without any, almost like a moisture, or at least it doesn't seem to need a lot of water. And then, of course, here now, great cloud filled with water rises up, and having risen, covers all the world in containing realm of billions of worlds. Point is that Buddha here in this case, think about this metaphor, just like a cloud. So a cloud bursts into shower and brings a lot of rain. And then now, each of these trees, bushes, trees, or whether big or small, would basically start sucking water according to their needs, right? And they drink water, if you like, or nourished by water, nurtured by water appropriately according to their needs, and to grow, sprout, develop, grow, and nurture into a mature tree. So this is and it's you can see that it's a very detailed sort of metaphor that has been described. So we will basically I'll give you sort of gist of what is happening here. And then if you notice here, 5.4, Kashyapa, the young and the tender stems, branches, leaves, petals, and you can see, of course, gradually these, if they are young, of course, they don't need much water. And then, of course, becomes bigger and bigger, they will need more and more water. 5.5, it says, Kashyapa Tathagata, the Arahant, perfectly enlightened being, appears in the world. In that way, just as the great cloud rises, Tathagata appears. Now, you can see the metaphor, the cloud resembles Buddha, just up. And then, of course, when the cloud bursts into rain, remember, it basically rains equally anywhere. Wherever there's a cloud, of course, the rain falls equally. But then, if you look at how the rain is being absorbed by the different plants, it's vastly different. He says, just as the great cloud rises, the Tathagata appears, the cause and causes the entire world with its devas, humans, asuras to hear his speech. Now, of course, Buddha, in the same way, they give the same speech, a similar speech, and everybody listens to it, and they hear something totally different. Human beings hear something different. Animals might hear something different entirely. According to Buddhist tradition, actually, yes. Buddha speaks a language that everybody understands. Just like the rain, when the clouds burst into rain, then of course everybody, depending on their own need, they take it. They get soaked by the water. And remember, there's a single taste of water, the rainwater. And Buddha is supposedly using a single taste of teaching, give the same teaching. But then when he says 5.6, he says, Kashyapa, just as the cloud covers all the world in all containing world system, world realm of billions worlds, Tathagata Arahat, perfectly enlightened Buddha emits sound before the world with its devas, humans, asuras, so that they hear his voice declaring. Essentially, when Buddha gives a teaching, so you got different beings. Remember, human beings somewhere in the middle, and then you got gods, and within God there are, of course, devas and asuras. Asuras are supposed to be hamayin. They are not entirely God, but they are still. They are always jealous of God, so they almost supposedly they always sort of there is always a tension between gods and asuras, and then human beings. Then of course you got beings that we associate with animals and hell beings and other things. Hell beings probably they are not. They might not have cognitive capability to listen to Buddha's teaching, and that's why because of heavy karmas. Even they do hear some occasionally, they won't not be able to understand. Say dogs, if you say something, they hear, of course, but they won't understand what is being taught. In the same way, the clouds. So clouds burst into rain, and some plants just simply cannot take water; they just dry up, or they, may actually, if possible, they sometimes flourish without. Okay, so it says I have crossover, and now this I don't think we need. That's the essence, and it goes on and gone. So in chapter 5.7, you can see in that way, Kashyapa, many 100,000 quintillions of beings come to Tathagata in order to hear Dharma. Just like clouds, the rain is something every living organism needs. Without moisture, it's not possible. Life is simply not possible. So in the same way, Buddha's teaching, there are so many beings who's thirsty of Buddha's teaching. And then he says, Tathagata knows the higher and the lower level capacity. Now here's the point. The Buddha actually is able to directly understand what sort of capacity, mental capacity, and the faculty that they have, whether it is a lesser or lower. And based on that, of course. Now here, one interesting thing is, if Buddha is like rain, and it just teaches one thing, and then each individual basically take whatever they need, then Buddha doesn't seem to be doing much, actually. Buddha doesn't, even his skill doesn't seem to be doing much. He basically teaches one thing, and every individual, they take their own whatever is required, whatever is appropriate to them. That seems to be just like any other thing, not necessarily skill. And so that's why sometimes it's little, I think, it's problematic to describe that as a Buddha skill. Whereas if you have an intention, if Buddha has an intention, and Buddha deliberately, of course, understanding well what is required for this disciple, what else is required for this disciple, then of course there is a utility in his skills. But in order to do that, Buddha would have an intention, because then Buddha will understand, okay, here are 3 disciples. This person has these qualities, and therefore he will need these instructions. The other is a little bit sort of mediocre. He'll need those instructions. The third person is a very supreme, highly intelligent. This person will, and I am sure that is exactly what Buddha's skills is about. So therefore, if this is the case, then I think that you will have definitely a Buddha. Buddha will definitely need all these mental activities, including attention, intention. If that's the case, then you really can't have a robot Buddha. Okay. I'm not sure if you are actually if you hear about this, because this is quite a big debate in the philosophy of mind. In philosophy of mind, think about this, in the West nowadays, in philosophy of mind, or in there's a big debate between the relationship mind and body. How is mind body and mind body related? Are they distinct? Are they separate? Remember, if you Atmavadan, let's say if you follow Hindu tradition, Atmavadan, who talks about who basically claims that they in each individual have a soul, Atman, or a self. That self is unitary, independent, and that is not really connected to the body as a singular substance. There's a body and there's a mind. There's a body and there's a soul. They're independent. When we die, body dies, but this soul doesn't die. So when the soul goes from one life to another, so in this life, this soul has one body, but next life it will have another body, and that's how rebirth is explained. But now in Buddhist tradition, there is no soul, there is no Atman, there is no self, there is no substantially real self. So if that's the case, how is body and mind related? And remember, Buddha actually, yes, Kamala, that's a good point. Actually, this sort of non-discriminatory super motivation. A good point. Yes, Buddha would have certainly in the way I understand, Buddha would have certainly have all this intelligence, cognitions, but those intelligence doesn't have to be always suffused in defilements. Intention can be pure intention, doesn't have to be afflicted, doesn't have to be ego based. So, but then of course, that aside, there are two readings of these sutras. If you look in among Tibetans, so some people will say Buddhas don't have any intention, Buddhas don't have mental events. Buddhas just like the sun, Buddhas just like cloud, just teaches, and everything is done by individual beings. Anyway, so when you think about this relation mind and body, I think that raises a lot of problem, and so from and that is also a related question here. When Buddha becomes a Buddha, if Buddha doesn't have if mind is somehow always have to be based on ego centric, then Buddha doesn't have an egocentric mind. But if there is no egocentric mind, then what kind of mind mental events are possible? And of course, one version of interpretation says it is entirely possible to have a mind without being without being egocentric, and that's what we call wisdom. So I like usually, I like to understand Buddha in that way, but of course, a large majority of the Tibetan, of course, prefer the other position. They think that basically Buddhists really don't have minds, because they always think that mind is this troubled, mind is always egocentric, and there's one reason why they think that is the case, and it's quite valid reason, because if you look at the 12 dependent origination link, remember, first one is ignorance. Ignorance gives rise to, say Maripa, that's the ignorance. Maripa gives rise to tuje, karma, karmic actions, and it is karmic action that gives rise to Maripa tuje namshe, and it gives rise to namshe. Namshe is the consciousness. Now, so is it the case that all namshes, all consciousness must necessarily be generated from karma, and those karma being generated from ignorance? If that's the case, then actually their interpretation is right. If consciousness must always necessarily must necessarily be a result of karma and afflictive emotions and ignorance, then that interpretation is right. But the whole idea of Buddhist practice is actually you can rise, the consciousness can be transformed and rise and transformed into wisdom. And that wisdom is sort of consciousness. That wisdom is still awakened. It is still awareness. But that awareness does not have ignorance. So that's the idea, right? Okay. They can be, I think we can, there is a lot more to say on this. But for the benefit of time, I think we should keep moving. Any questions so far? Okay. So if there's no, I mean, then this paragraph, if you look, Kashyapa Tathagata, the Arhat, perfectly enlightened Buddha, teaches Dharma in the way, in that way. and the entire Dharma has one taste, the one taste of liberation, freedom from desire, cessation, and the ultimate wisdom of omniscience. So the one taste, if you understand one taste to mean that there is just only one set of teaching Buddha gives, and then everybody understands it differently, and that's the only job Buddha does. That doesn't look very enlightened. That doesn't look even very skillful. So I mean, ordinary beings like any one of us can do that. It's, let's say, if you go into a classroom and then give a lecture, just you do one thing. That's all you do, and then each individual students in your class will interpret your lecture differently. Anybody can do that, but that's not a really skill, isn't it? Whereas if you have a group of students and if you're able to tailor your instruction based on what each individual requires, that's a skill. Why? Because that would really require a lot more out of you. Because first of all, you will need to understand exactly what they know, what they don't know, what they like, what they don't like, and all that. And we ordinary beings cannot do that. That's why Buddhas are marvelous teachers, because they have this kind of qualities. So yeah, I think these teachings can be sometimes interpreted differently. Okay, so and then it says 5.9, Kashyapa, the beings who listen to, retain, and practice the Dharma that the Tathagata teaches do not comprehend, know, or understand themselves. Why is that? It is the Tathagata who knows those beings. Now here, exactly, who knows beings, who they are, and what kind they are, and what they think, how they think, how they think. Now, if this is the case, now Buddha has to have a mind, or unless because it very clearly says here, the Buddha knows what they are, what they think, how they think, and and why they think. Not only just what and how, but also why they think, what they meditate on, how they meditate, and why they meditate, and what they attain, and how they attain, and why they attain it. Now, Buddha's that's why having these knowledge made Buddha as a teacher a very superior teacher, of course, supreme teacher, because of having those skills. Now Buddha can understand exactly what is the specific point that he or she would need that would elevate it to these individuals to become omniscient or a Buddha. Now, in our cases, ordinary beings, none of us, I want to say none, at least most of us don't. 99% of our teachers don't have this understanding, and that's why we fail. Our teachings failed because the teachings fail to make or to succeed precisely because we don't have understanding of our audience. Now here, basically, Buddha's understanding of the audience is perfect, and that's why he is able to make enormous difference. Now that requires a skill, that requires enormous cognitive intelligence and maturation from him or herself. So you can see actually, yeah, in that sense, why Buddha are superior teachers, because of those grounds. And Thakchoe, it is the Tathagata who has direct knowledge of them, direct perception of them, and sees them as they are. So if you look at these sutras, interpret, then you cannot actually sometimes justify the Buddhas are just like robo-Buddhas with no. In fact, sometimes the modern phenomena of what do you call them? Zombies, right? Modern phenomena of zombies. There's a lot of movies about zombies, and some people think actually interesting when Buddhas are interpreted just like a cloud in the sky, in the space, just like a what is called wish fulfilling tree. There's supposed to be a tree, mythical tree, and if you sit under the tree, Buddha is the tree. He doesn't do anything. Just Buddha is the tree. Buddha is the sun and the moon. You just underneath, and you receive all the benefit. But tree is not doing anything, except perhaps, of course, it's wish fulfilling. but there is no thought process, there is no thinking, there is no knowing, there is no awareness. It's just a blank robo Buddha, and that's why the zombie is supposed to represent the beings are being just purely physical with no mental activities. And now you can see, of course, if you look at these kind of texts, Buddhas are very, very aware of, intimately aware of everything. And that's why you cannot actually put zombies and robots, in fact, as an analogy with Buddhas. Okay, and then he also says 5.10, Kashyapa have realized the one taste of Dharma, the one taste of liberation, ultimate nirvana, the eternal nirvana, the single level, and the domain of space. However, in order to preserve the faith of beings, now here it's important. Even though Buddha have such a realization, but then he says he cannot give all the, he cannot just share all his understanding just because he understands. He says this, however, in order to preserve faith of beings who are on this and that level, higher and the middle, lower, like the plants, bushes, herbs, forests. Now here, this is the I think the core of the metaphor. The metaphor, remember, there are a lot of trees, different types of trees. Some are herbs, some are bushes, some plants. All of them require have a different requirement, at least when the water concern is concerned. In the same way, these individual beings have a different level of the requirement from Buddha. Some really require a lot more, others just tiny speck of one sentence, and that will be enough for them. And then he says, beings who are on this and that level higher, middling, and lower, like the plants of bushes, herbs, and forest trees, I do not immediately teach them the wisdom of Upanishads, because they now why? Because to preserve their beings, preserve their faith, because they think, oh, Buddha is too hard. They just resign, and if they resign, of course, there is not much use. So instead, you need to teach. Buddha teaches something that you can take. You can actually get inspired. If the ideal is too high, then we think that we are totally limited. There is no way they can achieve it. And so basically, we give up. Giving up, that's the one that Buddha doesn't want to see from us. So in order our aspiration going and then progress gradually, set us on the path of progression, Buddha used this as a skillful means. So therefore, he does not teach Buddhahood all of a sudden. Therefore, these three vehicle teaching is very useful as a skillful technique. He says, Kashyapa, you are astonished because you were not able to penetrate into Tathagata's teaching that contain an implied meaning. So Buddha would teach sometimes one discourse, but could have very different, deeper implied meaning. Why was that, Kashyapa? It is because the teachings are implied, and there are certain, deeper meaning that needs to be unpacking. Meaning given by the Tathagata's Arhat, perfectly enlightened Buddhas, are difficult to understand. I think, let me give you one example. So when I think I might have already talked about this. As a Vipassana meditator or meditator, you'll notice that every time you go to listen to 10-day discourse, so you go to 10-day discourse, 10-day sitting today, let's say, okay, and you have never done 10-day meditation retreat. You are hearing your teacher's teaching for the first time. You take the message on one level. After 1 year of your daily sittings, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, if possible, 1 in the noon, and then again next time you go and to do another 10-day sitting, you hear the same teaching. You are exactly hearing the same teaching, but your hearing at that time actually is at a different level. Not because teacher taught you differently, but our capacity to understand, our understanding capacity has massively increased. So because then, of course, you interpret last time, because you are not meditator, you interpret the teachings on a very surface level, only mostly on the understanding of the vocabulary, words, just mostly interpreting the word meaning. But now you interpret deeper with the phenomenological understanding because you experience based on your sensation and how you understood. And then you of course took the meaning. And then again, if you do the same thing 2 years later, deeper meaning, 3 years later, even deeper meaning, and then I think 5, 6 years, the deeper you go into your own meditation with your experience, we are able to interpret the teaching in a very fundamentally different way. So this is actually the point that is being made here. So therefore, even though the teaching has a one superficial meaning, but the deeper meaning, what Buddha's called here, the text called implied meaning, that can be very, very difficult for us to grasp. Kamala says yes, he agrees, because Kamala just came out from a 10-day vipassana sitting he has done previously, and now he agreeing that. Do you want to share, Kamala? You have, please. Instead of me talking all the time, I think it's good to have. You wrote it, but let Kamala.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, definitely, totally agree. It gets, I think, the understanding and the realization of the teachings becomes more and more, I think, serial to a certain extent. It's more. I felt that it's making more and more sort of very. It touches you more in a sense. That's why I said it's a serial effect. It gets deeper into your skin, so to speak. You get the sensations, all that makes more and more sort of I don't know what I was thinking at the first sitting. It's totally enhanced in the second or the third. The third one I did last week. It takes you in a different plane altogether, and it's a lot more effective and makes sense to a certain extent. So it is. I totally agree. Definitely, it gets deeper and deeper. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, I think that's how I understand this implied meaning. And the implied meaning, of course, when we discover, even though, of course, if you don't do meditation and the intellectually, the more we learn, of course, the deeper understanding we develop, at least intellectually also. But if you're doing serious meditation, like 10-day sitting, it's a serious meditation, serious commitment. And you can do, of course, you can see, after all, it's all about internal transformation phenomenologically, based on one's own experience. And then once experience changes and the perspective to it changes, I think our ability to receive Buddha's teaching changes fundamentally, because appreciation goes much deeper, as Kamala put it, beneath one's skin. Initially, it's above the skin, but later on, even beneath the skin. And this is actually even the experience works. Initially, your experience are all surface level, above your skin, and gradually you're able to penetrate beneath the skin and go deeper. And at a certain point, even at the level of the bones, and at a certain point, even breaking and all the splintering, or basically dissecting all the solidity. So these levels, of course, of transformation will allow us to receive Buddha's teachings on a very different level. Okay. Thank you, Kamala. So this, I think, and then what Buddha does in these verses, of course, he put what we have discussed so far in the verses form. So I'll let you to read them. And 523, those waters have one taste. Just as Buddha's teaching one of one taste, just give it one lecture, one teaching, and then our ability to receive them, even the one, it can have so many various sort of ways to do it. They fall from the clouds and remain here. The plants and bushes drink them according to their strength and allocation. Just as what we did with Buddha's teaching. Initially, if you are let's say if you are Buddhist, let's say if you're Buddhist, if you're at least born Buddhist, because you are trained Buddhist, and you approach Buddha with a lot of assumption, and unfortunately, your path may not be easy, because when you take Buddha's teaching based on assumption, you are not questioning, and that means you are not actually approaching Buddha's teaching with a healthy intelligence, healthy skepticism. And that's the problem we have, because if you're, sometimes you might say, oh yeah, if you're Buddhist, it would be easy to actually understand Buddhist teaching. Not necessarily, because you will sort of take these on the faith level. But if you're a skeptic and coming from a, let's say, purely from non-Buddhist tradition and come to do a sitting, and now you approach Buddha teaching very skeptically initially. But then when you approach skeptically, you are using all intelligence, basically trying to understand reason behind and how your own experience unfolds. And based on it, you take step by step. That's even much healthier. Approaching Buddha's teaching skeptically with a healthy mind is exactly what we need. So especially when as a meditator, this is exactly what is required, because meditation is especially type of we're talking about meditation that is based on mindfulness body. You basically you need to listen to what body says, not what your head says. Because otherwise, let's say if you have highly intelligent academic and studied all the Buddha's teaching before, you think, oh no, I know the Four Noble Truths, I know emptiness, I know the selflessness. What else there is to know? And you'll know that your head actually moves much faster, but your body doesn't speak. In the end, what matters is your body has to speak. If it is impermanence, understanding impermanence, the body actually, at the bodily level, you need to experience impermanence, changing nature. When you realize the change in the body, that's the realization. That is called direct realization. Otherwise, all you have is intellectual understanding of what impermanent is, and it has nothing to do with actual impermanence. You will notice that the contradiction, sometimes your academic or conceptual intellectual understanding somehow takes you but further and unfortunately leaves your body here. But for a meditator, you need to take step according to what on the basis of what your body says. So therefore, the experiential meditation comes along with how you actually feels. And remember, when you're observing body, if you notice that body sensation constantly changing, arising, passing, arising, that is the notice of impermanence. If you have not done that, you haven't understand impermanence, not even gross impermanence. Subtle impermanence is far away. So for this reason, you can see actually this notion of implied. Of course, otherwise, all of us. I remember that when I did my 10-day first sitting, that's many years after actually I've already been a philosophy student. Probably heard Four Noble Truths, 8 Fold Path, or emptiness. I wouldn't say million times, probably more than that. So much of classes, but because I didn't care to look into my body, we really neglected Buddha's teaching to take seriously. So that's why I think this understanding or that has to come from one's own experience, and the ability that we get to understand Buddha's teaching based on based on literal cross-referencing, cross-checking with one's own experience. That's how it does. And therefore, you can see the depths constantly change, the levels of understanding constantly change. And you'll see deeper and deeper appreciation of Buddha teaching, not because of the Buddha teaching, but because of one's own work, what that is being done. And it also almost like you can see Buddha, you are actually testing, you are analyzing, you are investigating Buddha's teaching, testing the veracity of Buddha's teaching based on your own experience. And when they correspond, you basically get a much deeper appreciation. So here, this is exactly what happening. Plants are taking water, which is available out there in the form of rain, and they can consume that much based on what their own constitution. The small tree and the greater trees, whether young, middling, or full, they drink the water according to their strength. and having drunk it, they grow as they wish. Remember, some become very big, some others stay stunted based on what they nourishment they take from water as well as other things. And this is exactly what the point of Buddha's teaching. Buddha might have, of course, said the same thing, but of course, people take differently. Because the rain falls from the cloud, the great herbs grow their stems, hollow stalks. Okay, that's 527 says, Kashyapa, in that way, the Buddha in this world appears like a rain-bearing cloud over the world. The Lord of the world, having appeared, teaches, expounding the true practice of the beings. Okay, that's one. I think we can skip that. All right, so.
Sonam, do you think we should maybe just take a little 5-minute break at 11:30?
Oh, yeah, sure, please. I almost forgot.
Give you a break, a little cup of tea. Is that okay?
Yes, that sounds good. Actually, yeah, that's a good time.
Okay, let's do that just for 5 minutes then.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonam.
Please.
Enjoy some tea.
Yep. Any questions?
There's one in the chat, Sonam, from Liz.
Ah, okay.
Just asking why the lotus is white and not another color.
What? Aren't there different colors? Lotus colors, blue, red?
You want to unmute Liz and you can ask?
There were some pink ones too.
Yeah.
I thought it was the White Lotus Sutra teaching.
Ah, you mean, okay. Good point. Pundurika Sutra. Maybe honest answer is I don't know. And that's the answer. Specific.
Maybe because white, from a point of the prisma, it combines all the colors.
So, point of view, what did you say? Yugen, can you say it again?
The prisma. The
Prism,
prisma.
like prism?
Not
Prism?
prisma. It's a triangular transparent glass that, depending how the light is reflected, it can divide the sunlight into the full range of colors. White meaning the universal or all combining or source of all the colors.
That's an interesting take.
It could be.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know actually the actual correct answer, because I think we met the one of the possible reasons, probably because at least in the, but it's just Indian, so usually Indo-Tibetan white always resembles wholesome, sometimes also good qualities. So it could have that that sense too. But honestly, sorry, I don't know the answer to this question. Please. We might need to, because I don't think there is actually any specific that explains why it is white. Anyway, if you know the answer, please share it with us. Okay. Other question? Right. So then let's go.
Yes, sorry, I had a question. I'm taking it that in the sutra, this is referring to individuals. The reign of the Dharma is coming over all individuals. It's not, appears to me not to be referring that this particular group has, you know, a higher potential for taking more water, or this other group. It seems to me, am I right in thinking it's referring to each individual's requirement of the Dharma?
Yes. Yep, certainly. Because if you look at the, if you look at the different shrubs, trees, different plants have so many different categories. Just as human beings, of course, we are, each one of us are different level. So the references, certainly individual requirements, based on individual requirement, Buddha teaches, and that actually lies that's where his skillful lies, skillful teaching, because he's able to cater the need of individual students, unlike our ordinary teacher. So that's why that makes him very skillful. And remember earlier the text would be that he says he is able to, he understands the each and every individual in the audience, what they're thinking, why they're thinking, how they think, and these sort of details. Yeah. Okay. Now, so I think we have to, given the time, we should go to. So the idea of a single Dhamma taste, this is important because I think you will come across this quite often. Even though Buddha might teach one a singular word, depending on individual capacity, they will translate or interpret differently. So that's one thing. Now I think we have to go to, there's a quite long move. Still about the cloud. 5.55. Okay. Now here is it, I think. 5.55 has the lightning, sun, and the moon parable. So it's a slightly different parable. In this way, I teach the true ultimate truth. Okay, maybe 1 minute. My skill in method is supreme. It's the same thing, I think. In this way, by using different paths, he doesn't. Basically, Buddha was saying that he does not teach ultimate truth straight away. He teaches ultimate truth gradually, depending on the individual capacity. So sometimes, for some individual, ultimate truth is the direct sort of direct teaching that Buddha gave, because if individual is very mature. Others might take a long time for them to get to that level, so that he or she can understand the nature of ultimate truth. Because ultimate truth says nothing is real, everything is like illusion. So that actually, hearing that might be, everything is like illusion, everything is empty, including yourself. That might sometimes burst our head, because we always think that we are somebody. We have our intrinsic identity. I am such and such person. I have this and that identity. So because we have such a strong intuition and strong grasping onto the sense of I, and that teaching which says there is no I, that is, of course, ultimate truth. Of course, that is a very profound teaching. So therefore, Buddha gives this teaching gradually. After all, I mean, when you look at this, then of course Buddha's teaching mostly stands from the practical. It's not just like a modern academic institution where you can teach literally everything, from the so-called the most profound tantric tradition to the introductory to the preliminary, right, or to the middling. Anything goes, because people are not interested in practice. People are just interested in academic intellectual, and that's I suppose that Buddha is not that interested in that aspect, because after all, the real transformation comes from one's own practice, and that means teaching and the theory and the practice needs to go hand in hand, and that's what Buddha is interested. So therefore, he's taking progressive, in Tibetan we would say lamrim approach, so that depending on their individual requirement and their maturation and the progress, that each instruction should be given. Right. So moreover, Kashyapa, Tathagata guides beings equally without any inequality. So that's, of course, Buddha's treatment to all beings, whether they are mature or immature, would be same, because of out of great compassion, and that's the reason why he is in samsara. He is come back into samsara again and again. And he says, it is like this: the sun and the moon illuminates the entire world. The light shines equally without any inequality on the ground, the bad and the high, the low and aromatic, the foul smelling. So same thing. I mean, if there is a sun and the moon, it basically shines everywhere, whether it does not discriminate whether good or bad, whether he or she is my friend, she is my friend, whether this person is my enemy, and things like that. No discrimination. And this aromatic, foul smelling, this is what, of course, it's important, because after all, if we are ordinary beings, we would definitely we will try to avoid those foul places. People would want to attracted with those, aromatic smelling places. But the idea is Buddha's treatment is based on equality, and therefore does, just like moon and the sun. Kashyapa, in that way, the light of the omniscient wisdom of Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly enlightened Buddhas, bring the Dharma equally to all beings who have been born in the 5 states of existence. Whatever their aspiration, whether they are of the Mahayanas, of Pratyek Buddhayana, or of the Shravakayana. And that way, the wisdom of the Tathagata is never lacking and never superfluous, so that there is thus the attainment, merit, and wisdom. So in the end, remember, practice of Buddha's teaching, you could say summarized within 2 things. One is based on attainment, merit, and wisdom. I mean, this Tibet, Sonam Gitsok and Yishi Gitsok in Tibetan, we would put this way. Essentially, the when we look into our progress as a follower Buddha, there are 2 ways. 2 things that we need to improve, 2 things that we need to cultivate. One is the cultivation of cognitive capability, ability to understand reality, because that's the most important part. And so that's the wisdom part. That's the accumulation of wisdom. Heightened intelligence that actually peers through the reality within oneself, based on impermanence, realization of impermanence, realization of selflessness, realization of emptiness, right? And then, but that in order to develop that faculty, we need to have other facility, and that facility comes from attainment of merit. So attainment merit, literally take it as the facility that helps you to develop the wisdom, and that facility usually we say Sonam Gitsok, and Sonam Gitsok is a merit. Essentially, even you have a very heightened intelligence. Let's say if you go, let's say your purpose is to develop this wisdom, but in order to develop this wisdom, you need certain environment first. Not only the external, but also internal. The internal environment of, let's put this way, good health, good mental resources. So if you don't have a good health, then there is no way that you can develop these wisdom. So good health comes from merit practice such as giving, generosity. Merit practice comes from the ethical living, the living that does not injure others, the livelihood that does not incur injury to oneself and others. We could ethical living, and livelihood that is based on giving, of course. So if you look into 6 parameters, the last one is wisdom. The rest are merits. Okay. Maybe, of course, it can be arranged differently. Say, of the 6 parameters of perfections, last one is wisdom, we know that. Now, in order to cultivate wisdom, we need to practice other merits. The merits, the other perfection of giving, right? So we generosity, sharing, giving, that actually is, from Buddhist standpoint, that is so crucial to generate the environment, type of environment that will give us a good health, good resources. In fact, this is Buddhist notion of investment, if you like. Future investment is the generous giving. We give generously, and if you are looking for, if you want to become a wealthy person in the future, of course, ideally we don't want to do it with one's own selfish interest, because then it won't be the most perfect giving, because it will be egocentric giving. But still, if you give with the some egocentricity, say, okay, if I give, if there is if there's a reward of a wealth in future life, that's all good. But if you give, at least in this life, somebody else get benefited. So this is so important. So that's why giving, especially for ordinary like lay householders. For the monks and nuns, they don't earn, they don't, at least in the traditional society, they don't work, so they can't practice this, but they can practice something else. They can practice the generosity of giving Dhamma teachings. Monks and nuns, that's they practice. But for a lay person, because we earn, we have those resources that we can contribute to the propagation of Dhamma, or at least propagation of, let's say, for the health, welfare, and those sort of things. So that's the giving. And then second perfection is ethical living. Right? Ethical living that does not injure, that abstains from harming others, abstains from harming oneself. That's so fundamental for merit making. Merit making is much more deeper than just going around stupa, doing some prayers. Merit making actually requires one's concrete actions. And then let's say also giving services, and in Dhamma environment, services in whatever capability we can provide. So sometimes if you have a group of meditators, helping them to cook, helping them to wash, helping them so that they can dedicate fully on the meditation, right? So like in our sort of tradition, 10-day sitting, we have to take roles, different roles. Sometimes you serve as a Dhamma Sevak, which means your job is actually as a Dhamma manager. You call it, you're supposed to be manager, but actually like a servant, you have to run, to clean the toilets and everything. That's a service. Why do you do that? Because actually this creates the environment for the Dhamma meditators, so that you are giving them the environment, good environment, keeping the toilets clean, and preparing their food so that whenever they need to eat, food is ready, so that they don't have to worry about anything else. Now, all these actually activities, other sort of activities, are so fundamental because they goes hand in hand with the cultivation of wisdom and the merit-making activities, right? And then, of course, patience, third perfection, fundamentally important. Not only so, of course, our own maturation, our own development, but also creating good environment, patience, enormous. Because if you are so irritable, very quickly irritable, the whole environment gets very tense. People become unhappy, and then eventually people will want to run away from that environment. So you have to create a very congenial environment, and in order to do that, Dhamma Sevaks have to be very, very patient, very let's say selfless. It's a selfless service. Go there, and then things might be very difficult. People might be so demanding. People might scold you. I mean, I remember one time I was the Dhamma manager, serving the 10-day course, and I was ringing gong just to wake them up, because I was thinking, okay, yeah, if they fall asleep, it's my duty to go around and ring them bell so that they can wake up and they can meditate more. But somebody got so angry, and he said, I know how to manage myself. Don't ever come and ring gong. Well, what do you say? So this is what happens. Because remember, when you're meditating, especially when first 3 days, first meditated, when you are doing just samadhi, anapana meditation, sankaras are coming up. So much of sankara, anger, hatred, sometimes. And because you are just developing a samadhi, you're not purifying, because you are not meditating on you haven't entered into wisdom yet, panya yet. So therefore, you're meditating on a samadhi, and when you go deep samadhi, of course, those sankaras comes out, and sankaras in the form of anger, hatred, arrogance, egocentrism will come out. And then, of course, little thing happens, meditators become very sort of agitated, and if meditators go do a little bit wrong, they get this too. So the managers have to be, in fact, extremely what's the word, skillful in that sense. Anyway, the point is, so this patience is a very, very important virtue, and gradually, of course, you can see this patience has the effect of not only creating good environment, but most importantly, creating environment within oneself. So maintaining coolness, calmness within oneself is the patience. Not just smiling, superficial surface. That's not the real patience. It might work for somebody, but it will not work for yourself. So the real patience has to come from the patience of resilience, patience that real toleration. In fact, there's no toleration sounds to be sort of, you feel so agitated deep, but so somehow you are managing. No, real sort of sense of letting go, peace within oneself. And these, then of course you could say effort, hard work ethics, very important, hard work. If we don't work hard, nothing is achievable. You could be the brightest person with enormous intelligence, but if you are a lazy person, everybody of us we can very confidently say that this person is not going to achieve anything. Because intelligence, if it is not complemented with hard work ethics, there is nothing that he or she can achieve. That also goes with not only wisdom, but also with the merit making. And then samadhi, of course, concentration, faculty, concentrated, single-pointed attention. Samadhi essentially is attention. Whatever work we want to do, we always want to pay attention, maximum attention. And with attention, we can achieve anything. Without attention, paying attention, you would be doing ages and you won't achieve much. So attention, of course, for anything, details, you will notice that is so important for merit making. Without attention, there's no merit because your mind is not there. Your mind is absent. So that's why, let's say I'm saying, I'm thinking about dollars, right? My mouth says, I'm thinking about how to get back to my, somebody who actually hurt me. And my mouth says, there's no merit there. Nothing whatsoever. In fact, probably other way around, because it's all hypocrisy. And people think, oh, yeah, I'm doing chanting. No, I'm not. Because without intention, because it is intention that creates merit. Remember, because that is directly related to karma making. And karma making is intentionally based. Intention and attention, they are always associated with each other. So therefore, this idea of merit and wisdom, although we take for granted, basically in these two, the entire teachings of Buddha actually are located. So this is important for us to understand. Okay, how are we doing with time? Right. Okay. So yeah. So that's the attainment of merit and wisdom. In the end, these two and these are sometimes called skillful and skillfulness and wisdom. Essentially, the combination of these two takes us. It is not wisdom entirely is not enough, because merit alone is not enough. Merit alone will give you a very high status. You might be very wealthy, very powerful, king and monarch, but you will ever stay trapped in samsara. Because without wisdom, that's it, But with wisdom alone, you can't go any further. Because wisdom has to have the environment to cultivate the transformation. So somebody might be very highly intelligent. Think about, let's say, somebody who created atom bomb or nuclear bomb. Oh, this is a very highly intelligent person. And the merit side is totally, what's the word? Totally out of order, because they really don't know that intelligence has to go along with the ethical living. Okay, so then the Kashyapa 5.58, they are not three yanas. It is only because the different practices of beings that they are said to be three yanas. So that's something we have repeated many times. Then the brother Mahakashyapa asked the Bhagwan. So this is Mahakashyapa's question. He asked this question, Bhagwan, if there are no three yanas, why at this time are they said to be the designations of Shravakas, Pratyek Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas? So both, I mean, this is a Mahakashapa question, asking question. Oh, well, if there are no three yanas, why is it actually called? Why did you use it in the name those three yanas? And then Bhagwan answered this question. Bhagwan asked to Brother Mahakashapa, Kashapa, it is like this. A porter, now here's the metaphor. Here is another simile or the parable of porter. Now these sometimes porter works in, I think there's another parable of porter, but this parable of porter has a different significance, and let me come back to this point a little later. A porter makes all bowls from clay equally. Some of them become bowls that holds molasses. Some of them become bowls that hold tea. Some of them become bowls that hold curds and milk. Some of them become bowls that hold bad and impure substances. Now, so in all these cases, bowls are the same, but the substances that actually are contained in the bowls are different. The external vessels are the same, but what is inside that is different. And then he says, there is no difference in the clay. It is only because the substances places within them that they are said to be different kinds of bowls. Buddha's teaching is exactly the same. Whoever appropriate, it is the appropriated. So somebody would approach some Pratyek Buddha with the individual liberation leaning individual will interpret Buddha's teaching that way. Somebody who wants to, Shravaka likes hearing Buddha's, always want to listen to Buddha's teaching. That's why they're called students, or sometimes disciples. The disciples who always want to hear Buddha's teaching, and they don't practice much. Just like to constant listen, they go to Buddha's teaching all the time. Whenever there's Buddha's giving teaching, it would be there. But the practitioners, like Shravakas, of course, they are serious practitioners, and they would mostly avoid crowd. Instead, they spend time in meditation, solitude. So they interpret Buddha's teaching differently. Bodhisattvas, then of course, they interpret Buddha's teaching differently with an enormous commitment. So in this way, he says, Kashyapa, in this way, there is this one yana, that is the Buddha yana, and there is no second yana or third yana. It is the yanas basically came into being because of the individual interpretation of Buddha's teaching, not because of the ultimate aim of Buddha. And then he says, Mahakashyapa asked the Bhagwan, when beings are different aspirations, with the different aspirations, depart from the three realms, do they have the one nirvana, or is there a second or third nirvana? Because it looks like, if you look at the three yana theory, and it looks like that nirvana for Pratyek Buddhas, nirvana for Shravakas, and nirvana for Bodhisattvas. They look, it looks as if this is the case. And that, of course, that's why Kashyapa, remember, Mahakashyapa might have the same thing in same idea in his head, and he asked the Buddha. And Buddha says, Kashyapa replied to Bhagwan, Nirvana is the realization of the equality of all phenomena. That's the ultimate, Nirvana actually is the attainment of the equality to all phenomena. And therefore, there is the one nirvana, and there is no second or third nirvana. Because there is a phenomenon, and there's equality, the equality of all phenomena has to be only one. They cannot be differentiated. So if nirvana is about attainment of that quality, then it has to be only one, right? And that's one way of putting it. But also, on the other hand, if you look at the different way, right? But still, Triyana makes sense. Triyana makes sense because you're talking about progressive nirvanas. So if I'm a Shravaka, my nirvana is my own conception of my freedom from my own desire, my attachment, and that liberation is good enough. And the Shravakas, the Pratyek Buddhas, the slightly more advanced nirvana, more deeper in nirvana, that is good enough. And Bodhisattva's nirvana is, deeper, even deeper. Buddha's nirvana is even deeper. So in that sense, of course, there is this explanation. But What Buddha is giving here, of course, is because he is emphasizing on the one dhyana, and ultimately he wants to say that the explanation one dhyana comes from the equality of all phenomena. So when you, okay, so what do we mean by equality of all phenomena? Every phenomena, if you look, whether with internal or external, when you actually analyze very carefully, and outside, inside, and meditators do it, of course. When meditators does it, they don't do it just philosophical analysis. They just look, observe, and everything will automatically break away, disintegrate themselves automatically. And that's what we call reductive analysis. Sometimes philosophers call this is called reductive analysis, because they think, yes, when you analyze the brick outside, you can break that into smaller parts. These parts can be broken further and further and further. Eventually, literally, there's nothing left. Not even the tiniest. Tiniest can be broken further. So if you do that, what do you get? Well, notion of emptiness. You think, oh, everything can be broken further, and therefore then nothing has intrinsic core. There is nothing core. So because therefore everything is equal in the sense that nothing has an equal core. Nothing has a core. Nothing has an essence. Nothing has a substance. And that's what nirvana is, or nirvana, ultimate nirvana. And that's what Buddha gives the example. Kashyapa, some wise being will understand the meaning through the teaching of parable. So he gives the parable. Okay. Therefore, I shall teach you the parable. Kashyapa, it is like this: a man who is blind. Okay, so this is the parable of a blind man. Anyway, any questions on the parable of the porter? Generally, you come across another porter, right? And that is also attribute of Buddha. The porter basically says makes a pottery, and then when they spin this, I don't know, what do you call this, a machine, and then the pottery moves just because it spun very strongly, and then it automatically moves. Then you don't have to do anything. And they say Buddha's actions are like that. Buddha has no intention, doesn't do anything deliberately, spontaneously it happens like the porter. But this porter, of course, example porter is slightly different, because idea is porters make a clay pot, but of course, metaphors mostly, parable is mostly about the oneness of the pots, even though what it holds are different. And the oneness represent Buddha's teaching, the equality of all phenomena. Okay. This example is, again, quite a long example, the parable of blind men. And let's, without reading all of the passage, I think we will read passages that are more relevant, or at least gives us more information. Now, if you're blind from birth, and somebody tells you colors, red, there's a red color, white, black, you would have no idea, and probably you might not believe. This is how example works. It says, if you're a blind man and then somebody gives you all different types of colors, because you would have no idea what, and you can't accept them. If you accept them, they're just it's going to be pure blind belief, right? Okay, they're good. They are not only different colors, but they are also good colors, bad colors. And then in the 563, the blind man does not have faith in those people and does not believe that they have what they have said. It's quite true, actually. If you have to take belief based on your own knowledge, of course, you don't have idea of any idea what the colors are. So why should you believe? And it's good. It's actually a good thing, maybe. Now, if a physician knows, of course, knows that yes, this blindness can be cured. So, and here, of course, now you might question this. The physician who knows every illness, sees the blind man and thinks that man has illness because of his past bad karma. You might have, oh, it has nothing to do with bad karma. It is just a condition, visual condition. You go and get a glasses, just like us. maybe this is the period when there were no glasses. So if you have something, if you just can say karma, maybe that's good enough. But in fact, why is it that some of you don't need glasses? Actually, most of us need glasses when you grow older, start reading. That's of course, I suppose, gradual decaying of our faculties. Maybe is it a karma or is it natural? Is natural what naturally happens? Can there be karma? Possibly, yes. Anyway, the idea is this: the physician knows, of course, why a blindness occurs, and then he says it could be karma, but the karma can be fixed. And he says, okay, every illness is one of the 4 kinds: caused by air, caused by bile, caused by phlegm. I've still no idea what actually these things are. I always hear this in the sort of medical literature: bile, yeah, kind of the stuff that sort of these think. But phlegm, what is it? But anyway, most of the ancient medical literature talks about those as the real cause of most of the physical diseases. There are 3 considered, these 3: bile, phlegm, and the air. Combination of these 3 actually causes imbalances in the body, because after all, our body are constituted by those different elements. So when there's elemental disbalance, physical discomfort or problem arises. Anyway, so physician thinks that he can cure, and then what it does, he says 65. Then the physician thinks again and again, okay, and there are 4 kinds of herbs on the King of Mountains, Himalayas. What are these 4 herbs? The first one is the name endowed with all colors and tastes. The second is called freedom from all illnesses. Third is called elimination of all poisons. The 4th is called bestowing happiness. Anyway, so the physician, out of compassion, basically goes to the mountain, searches all the herbs, brings about, and then create the medicine concoction, and then gives in a very different way. I mean, gives a detailed explanation. Some are cooked, some are grinded, some are crushing, and all these different ways, and then feed it to the blind person, and blind person recovers his sight. Now he sees colors. He sees good colors, bad colors, different types of colors, and then all of a sudden he becomes, at least according to this, becomes a little bit arrogant, because now he sees. Now he does not accept anything he doesn't see. He says, no, they don't exist. I can't imagine. There's no color because I can't see it. But now he sees colors, and he hears sound, and he accepts only thing that he hears and sounds, and he says anything he does not see, I can't accept. He becomes a little dogmatic. And just as what science sometimes now sometimes we say super scientific is somebody who holds this kind of view. Anything that is beyond your perceptual experience, you don't accept it. They don't exist. This individual becomes like that, at least according to the text. So I'm free from blindness. At that time, okay, so that becomes anything he says, okay, so he says, oh, I was so stupid in not believing what was taught to me, not accepting what was said. Now I can see everything. I can see everything. The assumption is anything that exists, he can see. Now, also here, this is arrogance, or I don't know. Is there any other word? I'm free from blindness. I'm free from blindness. I can see anything. Anything I can see with the eyes, they exist. Anything that I don't see through my eyes, they don't exist. That sort of. So then there was another kind man who says, because he knows that actually there are a lot of different side, deeper side that he can cultivate, that he has no idea. Those are 5 higher knowledges: divine eyesights, divine hearing, the knowledge of others' mind, memory of previous life, and mastery of miraculous powers. None of these skills he has, but yet he believes that whatever he hears, sees, are the only things that exist in the world. And then, of course, what happens is he They say, oh, all you obtain is your sight. If you have no other knowledges, why are you proud? You have no wisdom. So you can see now wisdom and sight is very differentiated. Wisdom, sight that we see with the eyes, they are sight, but it has nothing to do with wisdom. It has nothing to do, literally nothing to do with the wisdom. In fact, when you develop wisdom, you have to close your eyes. All these 5 sensory organs, they might be very, very helpful, but as a way of developing the wisdom, these need to gradually, these 5 senses becomes literally inoperable. At a certain point, when you develop deep samadhi, your ears will stop working. You won't hear sound. When deep samadhi, your eyes might be closed, but you start seeing things all just like your whole brain is open, right? Anyway, this guy, he thinks that, yes, he knows everything, but the story is, at least according to Buddha's teaching, there is a whole world, a much bigger world that he can develop by developing insight. But that has nothing to do with the vision. That insight has to, you can develop that actually opening the inner eye, if you like. I don't know if that metaphor makes sense. Anyway, they also say to me, you know what you are, because you know, sorry, when you are sitting inside house, you do not see the forms that are outside. You do not know the kind of thoughts or malicious thoughts of beings. You do not know, do not hear the sounds of people speaking or sounds of drums, conches or so, and which are 5 yojanas away. If they are a little distant, we have no idea, right? We can hear anything that actually is close proximity, but anything distant and far away, we have no idea. But that does not mean they don't exist. So how can you how can you be so sagacious? What is sagacious?
I think it means something like you have an insight or discernment of things.
Okay.
Having, looking it up, having
Mhm.
or showing keen mental discernment and good judgment, wise or shrewd.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. So basically, this question is put in the form, at least this for this person, put in the form of more pejorative sense. Yes, you have all these limits, but you still think that you are very wise, very shrewd, very clever. You shouldn't. So that's the point. There's a lot more things for you to explore. And then he says that then that man says to the rishis, because there's a rishi. Rishi, remember, is a sage. It's a sage or wise individual who says, yeah, there are other things that you need to develop that you have no idea what's happening. So don't be too proud or don't be too arrogant. Through what method and through what good action can I attain such wisdom? But then, of course, once he has told that there are other things in the world, then, of course, his curiosity built. He asks, what is the way? What is the way? How to develop those skills? And then he says, if you wish for those, you must dwell in a solitary place. It's basically, this might not be acceptable for us. In ancient time, yeah, this is what happens. Go into the forest, sit there in solitude. Why? You could ask, if sound is present in the midst of crowd, that's why, remember, it basically, these inner wisdom need to be cultivated all those places where the senses are literally senses don't overpower you, because then those inner qualities can gradually come and evolve. Anyway, so he asks, if in this way you can you have the qualities of Medican and you will attain higher knowledge by staying in isolated places. And the 5.69, he says, that man then adopt the goal and entering homelessness, he resides in the solitude. Basically, he becomes monk, becomes homeless. Well, not necessarily monk, but becomes homeless and leaves the home. And then actually now he went, but at least he is prepared to experiment what is happening. He want to see what's actually what is possible beyond the 5 senses. Having obtained the 5 higher knowledge, he thinks. Now, not only that, because he worked really hard, and what happens here? With one pointed mind, he abandons craving for this world. I'm still reading 569. Craving for this world attains the 5 knowledges. The condition of attaining 5 knowledges, one has to abandon craving for this world. This life, remember the purpose that we were talking about just to begin our discussion. And yes, purpose for lockdown, if you want. And then, of course, he says that the 5 knowledge he attained, and having attained the 5 knowledges, he thinks, I did not attain any qualities whatever through the other actions I had performed in the past. Now, this is news for us. Sometimes we do everything mundane, and yet we expect something super mundane. We do everything mundane and karmic, but we expect something that is something that transcends karmic. And so this is what he realized. He says, now I can go wherever I think of. In the past, I had a little wisdom and a little insight. I was blind. Of course, initially that's what was the condition. His was so bounded, but yet he thinks in a very grossly exaggerated way. So then he says, Buddha says, Kashyapa, I have made this parable so that its meaning can be understood. Its meaning should be seen this way. He says, Kashyapa, the blind men represent the beings who dwell in the samsara of the 5 kinds of existence. That's the blind man, us. Just literally think that we understand everything that because we have at least we have a senses. We think that and anything beyond we don't accept. Sometimes it's a kind of scientific prejudice. Beyond, we are not prepared to accept the possibility that something else can exist beyond what we experience. And those who do not know the good Dharma generates black darkness of kleshas and have blindness of ignorance. Those who are blind with the ignorance accumulates formations. Through the effect of formation, there is a great mass of sheer suffering. And then, of course, this is how, and then he says, in that way, they are blinded by ignorance. Blinded, just like this guy is ignorant, at least blinded, virtually blind. We are blinded by ignorance of not understanding our own self, our own true self. Tathagata has a compassion for beings in samsara, and although he has transcended the 3 realms, he has love for them like a father for his own son. With a great compassion, he goes to the 3 realms. The Bhagwan looks for an eyes of wisdom upon the beings who are afflicted and wandering in the samsara and do not know how to leave samsara. That's the Buddha's job, literally. Buddha's job is actually to whip us and saying that yes, this is not the not the best use of our intelligence. There are a lot more things that we can achieve. And then he says, seeing them, he knows these beings, because of the previous good actions, have a little anger and a great desire. While they have a little desire and a great anger, some have a little wisdom, some are wise, and some are ripened and pure, and some hold wrong views. Tathagata, using a skillful method, teaches 3 yanas to those beings. So essentially, again, the same thing point. 3 yanas are taught just as a skillful means. Now, those in the example of the parable of the blind man, used is the rishi. Remember the rishi who tells him, "Oh no, there's a lot more things for you to explore." And this is the basically example of bodhisattva. The great physician is seen to be Tathagata himself. Buddha gradually convinces the person to explore further. The blind man should be seen as beings who are blinded by ignorance. Air, bile, and felon should be seen as a desire, anger, ignorance. I'm reading 5.7 here. Okay, so 4 kinds of herbs should be seen as, now this is quite good actually. 4 kinds of herbs, remember, to be seen in the doors of emptiness. First one is doors of emptiness. the doorway of absence of attributes, the doorway of absence of aspiration, and nirvana. Harba Jebego, depends say it's basically door, liberation door of emptiness, liberation door of the absence of attributes. Now, why would you say emptiness is the door for? Emptiness is the door of a liberation. Well, remember the emptiness is difficult to accept because at the moment, as ordinary being, always think that we always presuppose, we always are conditioned by believing that we have a certain essence, existence, certain identity, fixed identity. And now emptiness says, no, there is no such entity. Everything is empty all the way up and all the way down. And because theoretically, if we basically use the intellectual understanding, then it doesn't look so profound. But when it comes to actual experience, of course, it's so profound and shattering. And that's why, of course, it becomes a door for liberation. Door for the door of absence of attribute. In the same way, again, we think that we have individuality, unique characteristic, unique beings. This is my, you would say, this is my personality. This is this is me. This is what makes me me. Uniqueness, right? We always celebrate in a certain sense, thinking that or assuming that there's something unique in me. And Buddha was say that belief, of course, is grounded or based in the idea that there is some essence in us that makes us so distinctive. And now that Maya teaching basically argues that there is no such essence at all. And that's why equality, every Dhamma, everything in the universe are equal in having the same essence, namely essencelessness. Okay? And then the doorway of absence of aspiration. So if it is true that aspiration, sometimes aspiration, of course, on the one hand, aspiration is so important. Maybe I think the word aspiration might not necessarily the best translation, but essentially desirelessness as a liberation door, because we know that desire is so pernicious, and desire always comes in the form of as a friend, so it never comes in the form of an enemy. So it never occurs to us that desire is something that is bad. Desire is something so cherishable, something that is so like friendly, or as if it is like the best thing that happens. So we cherish it. But the problem is, as soon as we get saturated, suffused in desire, it traps us. And that's why, of course, desirelessness happens to be a liberation door. And nirvana, of course, nirvana, if you understand nirvana as departure or attainment, freedom from craving, aversion, and ignorance. Nirvana, of course, is certainly the door, or not only door, basically, you have reached across. Okay, so these are quite useful, and nothing there. Apart from that, I don't think there is much in this. Blind men who gain sight should be seen as those who follow the Shravaka and the Pratyekpadas. This is useful, at least because we are talking about three yanas and moving from three yanas to ekayana or one yana. And the way you do it is blind man gradually moves, remember, initially blind, and progresses further. And then not only he starts seeing, so his own senses start working, but also he developed the further wisdom inside. And then, of course, eventually become fully liberated. So this is how you could say from we as ordinary beings gradually move from ordinary beings to Shravaka, and then from Shravakayana to Pratyekputayana, and then Bodhisattvayana, and then eventually to Buddhayana. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think as insofar as this chapter is concerned, it's there. Yep. Unfortunately, we are able to only do one chapter, but that's okay. And you can read the rest. I think they are essentially just like any other chapter. The discussions goes as followed by long poetic expression of what is was being explained before, and really there are new information added to it. But unfortunately, we are out of time. So next week, chapter 6, there is nothing much. I think we can literally just quickly pass chapter 6 quickly, and chapter 7 also is something, because chapter 6 essentially is a prophecy of different Shravakas, different Buddha's disciples. Buddha is going to prophesize one day become fully enlightened. And then chapter 7 is an interesting information, because remember that one of the main claim in this whole sutra, in minor sutra, is Buddha Shakyamuni, we thought that who become enlightened 2,500 years in Bodh Gaya. According to Mahayana tradition, at least according to this, like say, White Lotus Sutra, was just a simple display. Buddha was in fact awakened far ahead, many trillions of continuance of aeons before. And the interesting thing in chapter 7, basically Shakyamuni Buddha tracked back at his history and says, yes, he was Buddha. In fact, it's a very long one. Maha Abhija Dana Abhibu Buddha. And long ago. So we go back into that period and then track back his story, and says, as if it was, even though trillions of years ago, but I still remember as if it was yesterday event. So chapter 7 is interesting. So please do read chapter 6, 7, and most possibly also chapter 8, because there is not too much material, as a philosophical material. We might be able to sort of read 2-3 chapters in one go. That would be possible. Let's see. There might be other things. Okay. Final question. I'll stop sharing. Losi, Sunda.
The kasa 3 realms
No.
are they in Tibetan we said Deokam Sukham Sumekams. Is that we are referring to the 3 realms? Are they there?
Yeah, three realms usually. Yeah, those are the realm of desire,
yeah,
the realm of forms, and the realm of formless. Now, actually, what these those Kamala is asking about the Tibetan term, whether these 3 realms refers to a specific Tibetan term we called Kamsum. Now, this basically the existence realms. Desire realms consist of us as a human being and all the associated animals, and of course we can see billions of life on here things, but we can see also billions of living beings that are not visible, especially pretas, hungry ghosts, hell beings. We don't seem to see, but on the one hand, actually, if you look at the suffering, type of suffering they endure. Hungry ghosts supposed to suffer always hunger and thirst. There are plenty of beings in this universe and on the earth that goes through them. So they fit into the description of hungry ghosts. There are so many beings who have suffered so much of aggression from heat and cold. I mean, beings being born in these extremely cold places, they would constantly have to endure that kind of thing. So even though maybe they might so desensitized, they might not feel anything, but you can see. And then, whereas the form realms are supposed to be a big realm existence of God's realm, they have forms. That could be visible, but and the formless realm still they have a form, because remember in Buddhist cosmology or Buddhist psychology, if you like, the link between mind and matter we discussed earlier. It is impossible for the mind to be just mind. Mind, even in the highest yoga tantra, Guha Samaja and Kalachaka tantra, subtlest mind is always associated with the subtlest level of wind or oxygen. Oxygen gives mind the ability to move back and forth. So mind is always there. there is wherever there's a mind, there has to be always a subtle matter. So even in the forms realm, there's a form, but the form is so subtle. So that is the distinction. Usually, of course, two higher realms are usually celestial realms, and those the result of the celestial realms are samadhis. If you do a lot of samadhi meditation with no, not necessarily just pure samadhi without wisdom, then yes, in usually the result, coming result of those samadhi meditation is those two realms of gods. But that said, of course, ideally, Buddhist teaching consider human existence much more favorable state for progress, because here you have a body, and with the body you have experience. You experience pain, pleasure, and all that, and then of course we can experience suffering, and because of suffering as a leverage, we get inspired. But if you're God and always living in a very, soaked with happiness and bliss constantly, as long as you die, there's not much inspiration that drives your practice going, because you are happy anyway. Why should you worry? Whereas in human existence, we have enough kicks or enough challenges in our life that actually can get our inspiration going in terms of practice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sonam. I wonder if we can request you to lead us in a dedication.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Few moments of mindfulness of breathing. Just focusing on your breath again. Dedication, you can do it in different ways. Sometimes we call metta bhavana, meditation of loving kindness. Because you want to share the merit, the positive vibrations, the goodwill, for the welfare and fair of all beings, starting from your loved one. You can do it in any way you find it effective. Meditation on limitless compassion, limitless joy, limitless equanimity, limitless love, for limitless or for boundlessness can be a very effective way of sharing goodwill. And then if you want to add Mahayana aspect, Mahayana commitment, bodhicitta, you can add that too as well. Starting with sense of joy, boundless joy that you feel within yourself. the opportunity, the circumstance, and if you look around in the world, there's so much things happening. Very sad stories. People not having enough things to eat, not enough things to wear. Whereas we are here very privileged. We don't have to worry anything about daily necessities. We are not sick, we are healthy. Fortunate enough to get time to discuss Dharma, take inspirations from Buddha's teaching, and apply it into our life. Very fortunate. So you feel joyous, glad, peaceful within yourself. Settled. You can start sharing with other beings. You start with your loved ones. May all beings, including my loved ones, experience happiness and peace. Find happiness in her life, in his life. May I be able to facilitate in making that possible. You can visualize all your loved ones and share this metta. Send them the vibration of love. Maitriya towards them. And then across the world. May they be free from suffering, free from stress, anxiety, fear, aggression, poverty, starvation, hunger. Starting with your loved ones and then again thinking about all across the globe. May they be free from suffering. May I be able to contribute in whatever possible, whatever I can, to alleviate their suffering. This is meditation on karuna. caring, compassionate sharing. May they be free from this horrible disease. May this disease go away as soon as possible. May all beings be free from this disease. May it never spread. May beings stay safe, be able to stay safe. Starting from your loved ones, and then thinking globally, sharing your vibration of love. And then thinking the most difficult part, forgiving the ones who have done you wrong. Just letting go your bitterness. Looking at the face of the person you have close relationship or argument or fight. You have been angry so far, very frustrated, disappointed. Time to forgive. Just forgive this person. Letting go of your anger, resentment. Understanding this person as just like yourself. Trying to do things what we do and accidentally, unknowingly, and you just forgive. Let your mind stay at peace. Let your mind be freed from this resentment. And the next step, you can ask forgiveness. Because we always or often knowingly, unknowingly hurt others. Say something to others that people get hurt. Or do something that knowingly or unknowingly others get harmed. You can deeply seek forgiveness, ask forgiveness. Please forgive me for what I have done to you. I caused you suffering. I said something I should not have said. Just deep apology. that sets you free from the guilt trip. And make a strong, solemn pledge. Next time, I'll be mindful. I'll always be mindful with my words, with my action. I will use them wisely. Sparingly, appropriately, timely. May all beings be happy, be peaceful, be liberated. Avatu Sarvamangalam. Avatu Sarvamangalam. Avatu Sarvamangalam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Go to Jay. Thank you.
Sonam Lal, thank you so much again for a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next month again. Hopefully we can cover our reading in between, so we can.
Please do
benefit
so. Yeah, and
the-
also, please don't forget to do the exercise, breathing exercise.
Yeah. That's the most
Yeah.
important. Yeah, every
Yep.
day.
Every day, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, next month.
And
Thank you.
as always, I think if you have questions, you can forward them to Lindy.
Mm-hmm.
But please do do the reading, enjoy the reading, and it's got good fun.
It's a very good, wonderful
Yep.
sutra.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much, Sonam. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you,
look forward to
Sonam.
seeing
Thank
So
you.
much.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank
Stay
you,
safe.
Sonam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.